On behalf of Zionism Victoria, the Zionist Federation of Australia and the Jewish Community Council of Victoria, I'd like to welcome you here this evening. Zionism Victoria is delighted to be joined by these two roof bodies to host this evening, and I welcome Jennifer Huppert, the President of the Jewish Community Council of Victoria, and Philip Chester, the immediate past President of the Zionist Federation of Australia. We come together tonight both to learn more about the current situation in Israel and to show our solidarity with Israel and her citizens. Yet again, Israel and her people are under attack, and we need to call what is happening by its true name. It is terrorism. When people go about their daily lives are attacked and killed, it is terrorism, no matter who does it, no matter what grievances the attackers have, and no matter where the attacks occur, whether it's on the streets of Parramatta or the streets of Jerusalem. When religious or civil leaders encourage people to undertake attacks of this type, they are inciting terrorism, and there is no politically correct way to describe the types of acts they are encouraging or the nature of those acts. Each attack is felt deeply by our community, and we are strengthened to know that many in the wider community share our concern. We particularly appreciate the support that Israel receives from politicians from both sides of politics. Tonight we welcome David Southwick, member for Caulfield and one of the co-conveners of the Victorian State Parliamentary Friends of Israel, together with fellow state parliamentarians Nick Stakos, the member for Bentley, Graham Watt, the member for Burwood, and Lizzie Blanthorne, the member for Pascoe Vale. Thank you to each of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us tonight. We've also received apologies from Marsha Thompson, the other co-convener of the Victorian State Parliamentary Friends of Israel, the Deputy Premier of Victoria, James Merlino, Inga Perlich, the Shadow Minister for Multicultural Affairs, Neil Anglis, the Shadow Parliamentary Secretary to the Shadow Treasurer, Dee Ryle, the member for Ringwood, and Georgie Crozier, the member for Southern Metropolitan Region. We are indeed blessed in Australia to have such bipartisan support. The Jewish community in Melbourne is proud of its contribution to the multicultural nature of Victoria and to its involvement in the wider community. And we're delighted to be joined tonight by John Searle, the Chair of the Victorian Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commission, together with Absalom Niga, a leader of the African community in Victoria and a board member of the Commission. John, you are no stranger to this community, but it's always a delight to welcome you officially, and we're honoured that Mr Niga has been able to join us on this important evening of solidarity and information. While we are a long way geographically from Israel, our hearts and minds turn there often. And thanks to Facebook and other social media, everything that happens there has an immediacy that it never had in the past. But no amount of electronic information can replace the opportunity to hear firsthand from someone who works each day to tell Israel's story and to represent her. The close working relationship that the Jewish and Zionist roof bodies have with the Israeli embassy is a testament to the staff of the embassy and their understanding of the deep interest in Israel that is held by our community. Tonight, we are delighted to welcome the new Deputy Chief of Mission at the Embassy, Mrs. Anat Sultan-Dadon. Mrs. Sultan-Dadon was born in the Netherlands and obtained a Bachelor of Arts in Education and Psychology and a Masters of Arts in Criminology from Hebrew University. Before joining the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, she worked as a television broadcaster for the Channel 2 News and with injured soldiers, both as a counsellor and in the Rehabilitation Department of the Department of Defence. Since joining the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, she has had postings to Cameroon, Germany and The Hague, and has worked as a desk officer for Russia and the Ukraine. Mrs. Sultan-Dadon joined the embassy in August, she tells me it's her 2-month anniversary today, as Deputy Chief of Mission. And while she's visited Melbourne before in her new position, I think this is the first time that she is officially attending a function at Beth Weizmann, and it gives me great pleasure to officially welcome you to the home of the Jewish community in Melbourne and ask you to address us.
Thank you for the very warm introduction, and I have to say it's always heartwarming for me to be outside of Israel and stand next to the Israeli flag. I am honored to be here today and would like to begin by thanking Zionism Victoria, the Zionist Federation of Australia, and the Jewish Community Council of Victoria for organizing this evening. As was just mentioned, I arrived in Australia just 2 months ago, and in the short time that I have been here, I see many examples of the friendship and strong relations that Australia and Israel enjoy, with many sharing concern and support for Israel, especially during this difficult time of terror targeted at Israelis. The support and friendship are heartwarming and much appreciated. It is a special relationship that our two countries share. As the first nation to vote in favor of the 1947 United Nations Partition Resolution, Australia has had an influential role in the creation of the modern state of Israel and the restoration of the Jewish homeland. Australia has been described as the midwife at the birth of the State of Israel in 1948 and has stood by Israel ever since. Commentators have noted recently that Australia and Israel appear to be unlikely bedfellows, two countries that are separated by vast distances, multiple time zones. Israel, surrounded by hostile neighbors, fosters relations with vast collection of countries, including the US, Micronesia. Australia's economic interests lie increasingly with Asia. Yet for all that separates the two countries, key connections are identifiable, with many possibilities for cooperation in defiance of the geographical distance that separates us. However, unlike the relatively calm geographical area that Australia lies in, Israel lies in a region characterized by active conflicts in neighboring countries which are falling apart. When 4 years ago the events termed as the Arab Spring broke out, there were many hopes that the countries in the region would begin to move towards more democratic regimes. These hopes have unfortunately proven false, with some of the countries sinking into civil wars and falling apart, such as Libya, Yemen, Iraq, and Syria, who is immersed in a brutal blood struggle. In this light, Israel appears as an island of democratic stability in a turbulent and dangerous area, including Iran's nuclear aspirations and fueling of terror in the region. Israel is indeed an island of democratic stability. However, it suffers from the lack of a solution to the ongoing conflict with the Palestinians. This is a conflict between two national movements over the same small piece of land. The tragedy of this conflict is in its asymmetry. While Israel recognizes the Palestinian national movement, the Palestinians do not see Israelis as a people who are like them, entitled to self-determination, but merely as those belonging to a religion. This is the reason that whenever serious peace talks were held and Israel made far-reaching offers, the Palestinians were deterred at the moment of truth and refused to sign the agreement. Time and again, the unfortunate choice made by Palestinian leaders is not one of peace, but one of hate and conflict. The Palestinians have repeatedly refused to accept a nation state for themselves if it means accepting a nation state for the Jewish people alongside. In 1937, the Palestinians rejected the Peel Commission report that called for two states for two peoples. In 1947, they rejected the UN partition plan that did the same. In 2000 at Camp David and again in 2008, the Palestinians rejected new proposals that would have created a Palestinian state. The Palestinians rejected peace both before and after the creation of Israel. Before Israel gained control of the territories in 1967, and after Israel vacated Gaza in 2005. The Palestinians have unfortunately been more concerned with destroying the Jewish state than with creating and building a state of their own. The core of the conflict remains the persistent refusal of the Palestinians to recognize the nation-state of the Jewish people in any borders. The recent series of attacks against Israelis is the direct result of incitement by radical Islamist and terrorist elements calling on Palestinian youth to kill Jews. Since the beginning of this month, there have been 46 stabbings, 4 shootings, 5 car rammings, in which 12 people have been killed, 126 wounded. Just yesterday, 76-year-old Richard Lakin died of the wounds he sustained 2 weeks ago, a shot in the head and multiple stab wounds, as 2 young Palestinians attacked him and other passengers on a bus in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the city that I spent my youth in. I went to university in Jerusalem. I still have family there. My parents live there. And I would like to share with you a flyer that was issued by the Jerusalem municipality in light of the tragic events, with guidelines for behavior in public areas and what to do in the case of a terror attack. You can find this on the website of the Jerusalem municipality. Several languages, including Arabic, by the way, since the residents of Jerusalem may speak different languages. The guidelines, I don't know if it's big enough for you to read, but they include, for example, the instruction not to attempt to remove the knife from the injured person's body, to look for additional stab wounds, how to stop the bleeding. I cannot think of any city in the world whose people would accept receiving such guidelines from their municipality. And yet, when it comes to Israel, many in the international community somehow view this as acceptable. Some even question the use of excessive force by Israel's security forces in dealing with these terror attacks. In sharp, shocking contrast to this flyer, I would like to share with you another flyer. This one has been issued by the Fatah movement in Jerusalem. And you can see on the top the Fatah symbol, Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, and Yasser Arafat. It reads, for those of you who don't read Arabic, the Fatah movement in Jerusalem announces the death of its brave Shaheed, the martyr of Jerusalem, Fadi Alun. Fadi Alun carried out a stabbing attack in Jerusalem on October 4th, wounding a 15-year-old Jewish youth, and was shot to death by Israeli police. To the Palestinians, he and the other terrorists are celebrated heroes. Statements by Fatah, by Hamas, by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, spokespersons have described these terror attacks as heroic actions and the natural response to Israel's crimes. The terrorists of these recent attacks have not been operatives of any established terrorist organization, and the current wave of terror has not been directed by any organization, but rather is directly inspired by the intensive incitement accompanying it, using lies to spread hate and incite, such as the fabricated accusation that Israel is trying to change the status quo on the Temple Mount, while in reality, Israel stringently maintains the status quo. Last year, some 3.5 million Muslims visited the Temple Mount, alongside some 200,000 Christians and 12,000 Jews. Only Muslims are allowed to pray on the Mount, and non-Muslims may visit only at specified times, which have not changed. Though the Temple Mount is Judaism's holiest site, where Solomon built his temple some 3,000 years ago, Israel will not allow a change in the status quo. The ones trying to change the status quo are the Palestinians, who are violently trying to prevent Jews and Christians from even visiting a site holy to all 3 faiths. An additional inciting fabrication is that Israel seeks to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque, while in reality, since reuniting Jerusalem in 1967, Israel has vigorously protected the holy sites of all faiths, including Al-Aqsa. In the Middle East, where militant Islamists desecrate and destroy churches, synagogues, World Heritage sites, as well as each other's mosques, Israel is the only guarantor of Jerusalem's holy places. Palestinians have been propagating the Al-Aqsa is in danger myth since at least 1929, when the Palestinian icon, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Haj Amin al-Husseini, used it to inspire the massacre of Jews in Hebron and elsewhere. Nearly a century later, the mosque remains unharmed, but the lie persists. Despite the tension between the sides resulting from violent actions, as we see these past days and weeks with the rise of deadly terror attacks carried out by Palestinians, the hope is that both sides return to negotiations, as we have no other alternative. We are doomed to live together. We hope to see the Palestinian leaders take a strong stand against terror rather than embrace it, and return to peace negotiations. Despite the ongoing conflict and recent developments, we must remain hopeful for the benefit of both our peoples. As the late Israeli Foreign Minister Abba Eban once said, sometimes people do the right thing, but only after exhausting all other possibilities. While addressing the current situation today, I think it is very important also to take a step back and look at the broader picture. Although Israel lies in a hostile region and is forced over and over to protect itself and constantly be on guard, it has many accomplishments to be proud of. It has succeeded in building a strong, modern economy. Lacking significant natural resources, Israel has resorted to investing in its main resource, the human resource, investing per capita more than any other country in R&D, with an annual 4.5% of our GDP dedicated to that end. 6 Israelis who have received Nobel Prizes in the fields of science in the last decade are proof of the remarkable achievements that Israel has reached in the fields of high-tech, scientific, medical, agricultural, industrial innovation. In all these fields, Australia and Israel can cooperate for mutual benefit. With an annual bilateral trade worth of roughly $1 billion, Israel and Australia enjoy strong commercial relations. Encouraging stronger political, social, educational, cultural ties between Israel and Australia is crucial at a time when we are seeing a resurgence of violence in Israel. I'm very happy to say that even during these times, especially during these times, it is remarkable that there are various delegations from Australia in Israel from different fields, among them, for example, a delegation of close to 50 business people and professionals visiting Israel starting tomorrow, with a focus on innovation. I think there was a piece about it today, actually in one of the papers, headed by Wyatt Roy, organized by the Australia-Israel Chamber of Commerce. Innovation is a field that holds much potential for future cooperation between Australia and Israel. Despite all the challenges that Israel continues to face, it continues and will continue to flourish. Thank you. Toda.